So Elon Musk, right?
Hmm.
Where do we even start?
I mean, the guy launches rockets,
Yeah,
dreams of Mars, tweets up a storm. It's a lot.
it really is.
But thankfully,
Thankfully.
you handed us Walter Isaacson's new biography,
Oh, perfect timing.
which means we've got a ton to unpack.
We really do. And Isaacson doesn't shy away from the complexities,
Okay.
which I appreciate.
Right.
Yeah, what's fascinating here is
Yeah.
how he connects Musk's extraordinary achievements with his personal life, like painting a nuanced portrait of the man behind these missions.
Yeah, missions, yeah.
Right. Like, where do you even begin with a guy like Musk?
I know, right?
Isaacson takes us all the way back to his childhood
Okay.
in 1980s South Africa.
Okay.
Imagine this.
Okay.
You're 6 years old, racing down your driveway,
Uh-huh.
when suddenly your dog attacks.
Oh, wow.
You're rushed to the hospital,
Oh, jeez.
stitched up,
Oh, no.
and later you find out your beloved dog has been shot.
Oh, my gosh. That's the kind of event that shapes a person,
It really is.
especially a child.
Absolutely, especially a child.
Yeah.
Now, connect that experience to the fact that his father,
Yeah.
Elon Musk, was,
Mhm.
as Isaacson describes him, okay, a rogue and a fantasist.
Yeah.
Who often resorted to verbal abuse. It creates a very specific and, quite frankly, challenging environment for a young Elon Musk.
It's no wonder, then, that Isaacson highlights this idea of a fractured reality that seems to follow Musk.
Right.
It's like he's always searching for something solid to hold on to, whether that's in technology, space exploration, or even those ambitious goals he sets for himself and his companies.
It's so true.
Yeah.
That's a really insightful connection.
Yeah.
Because it's not just about the trauma, but also the impact of having a father who is both charismatic and deeply flawed.
Right.
It's this push and pull between admiration and,
Yeah.
let's be honest, fear
Yeah.
that seems to be reflected in some of Musk's own leadership traits later on.
Right? Like, how could it not,
Right.
Yeah.
You can't help but wonder, like, how things might have been different if he'd had a more stable, nurturing upbringing.
It makes you wonder how things might have been different if you'd had a more stable, nurturing upbringing.
Exactly.
Instead,
Yeah.
you have these instances of verbal abuse from his father, being called worthless and constantly berated. It's hard to imagine the impact that would have on anyone's sense of self-worth.
Absolutely. And Isaacson doesn't let us forget that. He contrasts this harsh paternal figure with the influence of Mae Musk, Elon's mother.
Okay.
She represents stability, resilience, a counterpoint to Errol's volatility. It's as if she provided a sense of grounding, a
Yeah.
possibility that
Yeah.
perhaps allowed Elon to dream big even amidst the chaos.
It's classic nature versus nurture, right? How much of who we become is predetermined,
Right.
and how much is shaped by our experiences, especially in those formative years.
Especially in those early years.
But let's be real, even with a difficult childhood, not everyone becomes Elon Musk.
Right. And that's where Isaacson brings in this fascinating anecdote
Okay.
about a young Elon in college. He essentially reverse engineered a business simulation game,
What?
not just to win,
Yeah.
but to completely dominate it.
Wait, so instead of playing the game as intended,
Yeah.
he rewrote the rules.
Exactly. He hacked the system. And that, I think, gives us a glimpse into the core of who Elon Musk is. Someone who sees systems, sees limitations, and immediately starts looking for ways to break them, to bend them to his will.
That's wild.
Right.
And this isn't just some college prank.
No.
This becomes a recurring theme in his career.
Precisely. This desire to understand how things work at their most fundamental level is what drives him to build companies like Zip2.
Okay.
His first foray into the tech world, which Isaacson argues foreshadowed much of what was to come.
So even back then, with Zip2, we start to see glimpses of that relentless drive.
We do.
That ambition that would later define him.
Absolutely. But keep in mind, those same traits also manifested in his leadership style.
Yeah.
Even in those early days, he was known for being demanding, even abrasive at times. He had a vision,
Right.
and he expected everyone around him to keep up.
It's almost as if that drive, that ambition, is both his greatest strength and his biggest weakness, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. And it's that tension, that constant push and pull between brilliance and impulsiveness that makes Elon Musk such a compelling figure.
And that brings us to his time in Silicon Valley, right?
Right.
This is where things really start to take off with PayPal.
Exactly. PayPal, it was a crucible.
Okay.
That's for sure. It's where Musk really honed his skills.
Right.
Not just as a tech visionary,
Yeah.
but as a leader, who
Right.
wasn't afraid to get his hands dirty.
Okay.
Isaacson actually tells this great anecdote about him challenging a colleague to an arm wrestling match.
Wait, seriously, what were they even arguing about?
A coding dispute,
Really?
believe it or not. Oh my God.
But that's Musk, right? Always pushing boundaries, even in the most unexpected ways.
Wow.
And guess what?
What?
He won the arm wrestling match, too.
Okay, I'm both terrified of and weirdly impressed by that story.
Right?
But it does track with what we know about him, right?
It does.
This incredible drive,
Yeah.
but also this competitive streak
Yeah.
that seems to permeate everything he does.
It's a key part of understanding how he operates.
Okay.
But here's where things take a turn.
Okay.
Isaacson talks about Musk contracting malaria,
Oh, wow.
a near-death experience
Yeah.
that could easily derail his entire trajectory.
You'd think that would make someone want to slow down,
Right.
smell the roses a bit.
You'd think so.
Yeah.
But for Musk, it had the opposite effect.
Right.
He famously said, vacations will kill you.
Oh, boy.
And that sense of urgency of making every moment count became even more pronounced after that brush with mortality.
Oh, wow. And
Yeah.
that's right around the time he started SpaceX, right?
It's almost like this near-death experience solidified his life's mission. Colonize Mars, ensure humanity's survival.
It's a big one.
Yeah, that's not something you just casually decide over coffee.
No, it speaks to a deep-seated belief
Right.
that we need a backup plan,
Yeah.
that Earth is ultimately fragile.
Right.
But Isaacson doesn't just present this as some whimsical dream.
Right.
He delves into the early days of SpaceX, the skepticism Musk faced, the string of failures with the Falcon 1 rocket launches.
It's easy to forget that now, with SpaceX being as successful as it is.
I know, right?
They're practically a household name when it comes to space exploration.
They really are.
Yeah.
But imagine the pressure back then.
I know.
Isaacson describes the fourth Falcon 1 launch as make or break.
Wow.
Not just for SpaceX,
Yeah.
but for Tesla as well.
Ooh.
Musk had poured his own fortune into both companies.
Wow, that's a lot riding on one launch.
Failure wasn't an option.
That's incredible.
It really is.
A single rocket launch.
Yeah.
Carrying the weight of not one, but two, potentially world-changing company.
I know, it's crazy.
It's no wonder he seems to live life on the edge.
Right.
Yeah.
And let's not forget,
Why?
while SpaceX is reaching for the stars.
They literally
Yeah.
reaching for the stars.
Musk is also busy here on Earth,
Yeah.
trying to revolutionize the automotive industry with Tesla.
And it's not just about being a car company, right?
No, not at all.
He had this vision for sustainable energy,
Yeah.
for a future where electric vehicles weren't just a niche product, but the norm.
Exactly. And Isaacson emphasizes that this wasn't just some passing interest for Musk.
Okay.
He'd been fascinated by electric cars since childhood.
Really?
In fact,
Yeah.
his first foray into the business world, Zip2,
Right.
was intended to fund his electric car ambitions.
So even back then, with Zip2,
Yeah.
electric vehicles were already on his mind.
Always on his mind.
That's remarkable.
Right.
It speaks to how long he's been dedicated to this particular vision.
Absolutely. And it's important to remember that when he invested in Tesla early on,
Yeah.
it wasn't just about making a profit.
Okay.
He saw an opportunity to bring his vision to life, to prove that electric vehicles could be not only practical, but also high-performing and desirable.
Right.
He was intimately involved in the design and direction of the company even before he became CEO.
Wow.
Oh.
Okay.
Yeah.
It wasn't all smooth sailing, though.
No.
Isaacson talks about the challenges Tesla faced.
Yeah, definitely.
The near bankruptcy during the development of the Roadster.
I know.
It seems like every single one of his ventures has involved a certain level of risk, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. And what's interesting is that Isaacson doesn't shy away from that.
Okay.
He talks about Musk's frustration with traditional manufacturing processes, his obsession with cost optimization.
Right.
There's this great anecdote about Musk comparing the cost of a rocket valve to a car valve and being shocked by the difference.
Really?
Yeah, it highlights his commitment to challenging assumptions, to finding more efficient ways of doing things.
That reminds me of something you mentioned earlier about him hacking that business simulation game in college.
Oh, yeah.
It's like he's constantly looking for the most fundamental principles,
He is.
the underlying rules,
Yeah,
and then figuring out how to rewrite them,
totally.
whether it's in code,
Right.
in manufacturing,
Yeah.
or even in entire industries.
It's a fascinating parallel.
Yeah.
And it speaks to his relentless pursuit of innovation.
Right.
But of course, all this drive, this ambition,
Yeah.
it comes at a price.
Right.
And Isaacson doesn't shy away from exploring the more tumultuous aspects of Musk's personal life.
Right, because we've been talking about his companies, his missions,
Yeah.
his successes.
Yeah,
But what about the man behind it all?
exactly.
It's no secret that his personal life has been just as eventful, wouldn't you say?
To say the least.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the next part of our deep dive gets really interesting.
Okay.
Because to understand Elon Musk, you have to understand the forces that drive him, both internally and externally.
Right. So we've got this picture of Musk, the relentless innovator, the risk taker, but also someone who seems to crave intensity
In every aspect of his life.
in every aspect of his life. And Isaacson doesn't shy away from that, especially when it comes to Musk's relationships.
And this is where understanding his personal life becomes crucial, to understanding his drive, his ambitions. Isaacson talks about how Musk is drawn to partners who are, and I'm quoting his brother here, beautiful but with a very dark side.
It's like he's seeking out a reflection of that internal intensity, even if it leads to turbulence in his personal life. His multiple marriages, the high-profile relationships, they all seem to fit this pattern.
You can't ignore the impact of his first wife, Justine Musk. Their relationship and the tragic loss of their first child, Nevada, it clearly left a mark on him.
It's heartbreaking to read about, and you can see how it feeds into this sense of loss, this fear of running out of time that seems to fuel his urgency. Isaacson even explores the emotional toll that Musk's single-minded dedication to his companies has taken on his relationships.
Absolutely. Isaacson doesn't let us off the hook with easy answers. He points out how Musk's intense focus can be perceived as neglect, a lack of empathy, even by those closest to him.
Right. It's a side of success we often don't talk about.
Yeah.
The idea that achieving greatness can sometimes come at the expense of personal connections, of being fully present in your own life. But then, even with all of that going on, he dives headfirst into the world of Twitter.
And this is where things get really interesting. Twitter, for Musk, was never just a social media platform. Isaacson describes it as an outlet for his ideas, a way to connect directly with millions of people,
Right.
to bypass the gatekeepers
Yeah.
and control his own narrative.
Which makes sense given his personality. He's always challenged conventions, pushed boundaries.
Absolutely.
But his takeover of Twitter,
Yeah.
it's been a wild ride, to say the least.
That's one way to put it.
Yeah.
Isaacson doesn't hold back in describing the chaos,
Oh, no.
the firings, the policy changes, the clashes with journalists.
It's almost like he thrived on the drama, the controversy.
And yet beneath that chaos, there's a clear belief,
Okay.
at least from Musk's perspective,
Yeah.
that he's fighting for free speech, for a more open and democratic platform.
But at what cost? Right. That's the question Isaacson seems to be grappling with, because on one hand, you have this vision for a more accessible digital public square.
Right.
But on the other hand, you have Musk's own impulsive nature,
Yeah.
his tendency to lash out, to censor those who disagree with him.
It's that duality, that contradiction,
Right.
that makes him so endlessly fascinating.
Totally.
He's a walking paradox.
Yes.
A champion of free speech who silences his critics. A visionary who seems intent on self-sabotage.
It's like that Greek tragedy we were talking about earlier. He's achieved incredible things, but there's this fatal flaw, this impulsiveness, that seems to constantly threaten to undo it all.
And it's most evident in his online persona. Isaacson calls him prone to shooting himself in the foot.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Like in that incident with the British cave diver during the Thai cave rescue.
Right, the pedo guy comment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a perfect example of how his gut reactions,
Yeah.
often fueled by late nights and who knows what else,
Right.
can have real-world consequences.
Totally.
And yet, even with all that, Isaacson leaves us with this sense of admiration for Musk's sheer audacity, his willingness to dream big and pursue those dreams no matter how improbable.
It's like he's constantly pushing the boundaries of what's possible, both for better and for worse. So where does that leave us? What's the final verdict on Elon Musk?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? I don't know that there is a clear verdict. I think Isaacson would argue there's no easy answer. Musk is a complex figure, a study in contradictions. He's a force of nature, capable of both incredible innovation and reckless destruction.
He's a reminder that progress isn't always linear,
Right.
that even the most brilliant minds are capable of great flaws.
And as we stand here on the cusp of a future increasingly shaped by technology,
Right.
His story serves as a cautionary tale,
Okay.
a reminder that we must be mindful of the consequences of unchecked ambition, of the fine line between genius and madness.
It's a conversation we need to keep having because one thing's for sure. Whether you admire him or fear him, Elon Musk is a force to be reckoned with, and his story is far from over.